bottom. Okay, I'm back, and hopefully this time you can hear me better. Again, as I was saying, before getting into this slide, I wanted to talk about confidentiality, how important it is to hold employees' personal identifiable data, such as Social Security and bank information, to the highest possible security. Okay, unfortunately, data breaches are too common, and the personally identifiable information found in payroll and HR systems is the target of hackers. Confidentiality must be utmost thought of payroll professionals. Everyone is entitled to maintain a certain degree of privacy regarding their personal data. So how does Accountants World protect your and your clients' data? We host all our data on Amazon Web Services, the same industry-leading IT infrastructure used by Amazon.com to run their entire business. These servers are fully secured and comply with leading industry certifications, including ISO 27001 and SAS 70 Type 2 audits. Encryption. All our web servers are secured using secure socket layers, SSL. Servers are assigned a secure certificate ID that identifies the website and enables us to use SSL for secure data transfer. To protect your and your clients' financial information while it is transmitted over the internet, all critical information is encrypted using 128-bit SSL encryption, called green bar digital certificates from GoDaddy. For further protection, sensitive information remains encrypted and stored on our servers. So let's move on with the slide. System controls should include access. You want to restrict to authorized staff and with a user ID and strong password. You periodically review authorized access and do not share your login information and always use strong passwords. Process and procedures. Revoke access to terminated employees immediately. Use audit trails to track and identify changes to data by users. Okay, Payroll Relief does provide an invaluable tool for this task, which we'll cover shortly. Use systems edits and alerts. We'll look at these in detail later. And lastly, documentation. You want to document all your internal and external controls and periodically test them for effectiveness. Make certain to always have the most up-to-date antivirus protection. We have implemented in Payroll Relief several security features to prevent fraud. 30% of businesses affected annually by fraud. Okay, here I have a story that I caught on the internet about a fraud case where after the payroll director inputted vacation and service paid to the employee payroll records, he simply replaced their bank information with his. The number of fraudulent payments made to his own bank account using this scam was 134. Okay, why? Because that employer did not have controls and procedures in place. And it took that long to catch the hacker, or in this case, the employee, which was not even a hacker. In Payroll Relief, there are safeguards related to employee direct deposits information. For example, changes are logged, and we highly recommend that you review the employee changes report, which we'll discuss later in detail. System does not allow changes to multiple accounts, and only the admin logins can modify employee bank information. If not already in place, we need you to develop and maintain controls and processes to prevent fraud. With this being said, let's go over defining the engagement. First and foremost, you need to know the client. Use greater diligence with a new client because they may pose a higher risk. Perhaps only offer EFT for taxes at first and wait to offer direct deposit. Identify current payroll method. If they're coming from another reputable payroll provider, that's good. Then there's some confidence. If it's been done by hand, then there's not so much confidence. And again, only take fiscally responsible clients. Make proposal best suited for client. Know what tasks the client is capable of handling. As many of you know, a strong characteristic of Payroll Relief is that it is customizable. This allows you the flexibility to offer a service where your firm does all the work, or the client does most of the work, or somewhere in between. Use this customization to better control who performs certain tasks. And you need to have a written client engagement that outlines client responsibilities, who is responsible for NSF situations, who do you call in such cases, what if the person is not available, what you do and what you don't do, and what fees and how are they collected. All these things should be part of your engagement. You need to analyze internal resources. Define internal roles. For example, staffing. Who does what, when. Assign backup staff for all tasks for situations when a staff member is out of the office. You want to cross-train your employees. For example, who handles processing of ACH applications? When are they submitted? If that staff member is on vacation, who will handle the task? What's the backup plan to archive data and forms? Have a procedure for backing up the data that you need. There is an archive functionality in Payroll Relief, and also the notices, who handles them, and how, and what is the process for handling IRS or state notices. Set up formal procedures. How to handle exceptions, such as NSFs, payroll exceeding direct deposit limits, or a next day tax situation. Set up formal procedures for processing payrolls, commissions, additional payrolls. How to handle e-file rejections, if any. Managing compliance. We will see more on this later. And ensure proper oversight. Quality assurance for the payroll process. Peer review. Have different staff members perform different tasks to help facilitate cross-training and to help identify inconsistent practices within processes that can lead to lapses in control. Maximize efficiencies, go over processes to ensure highest efficiency. And as the payroll processor, these steps are very important in ensuring that your operation runs smoothly. So one important item that we just discussed is archiving of pertinent client data. For example, Payroll Relief now offers our cloud-based document management system, Cloud Cabinet, to assist you with this task. If you do not own Cloud Cabinet, simply click on the cloud icon to access a standard version of the Cloud Cabinet program. And as you can see in the lower part of the screen, there's Cloud Cabinet, and there's the client, Atomic Payroll Service, and there's a folder called Payroll where the forms and reports will be archived. Automatically archived to your Cloud Cabinet applications are the payroll set report for each payroll processed after printing checks, and compliance forms after each quarterly compliance month. Or you may choose to archive at your leisure. Just look for the archive button. All the tax form screen as well as all the report screens have it archived. And then you can archive at your leisure instead of the system automatically archiving. Payroll Relief also offers, in many situations, the export to Excel functionality throughout various screens. There are two of many that, in my opinion, are worthy of mention because of their importance. First is the payroll register. Okay. On the payroll processing menu, if you want to save all payroll register information, whether for a particular payroll or a specified period of time, or for one employee or all employees, you may do so from this screen. Simply select the period from and to, whether you want a particular payroll or all the payrolls, and then you can view it on screen, export it to Excel, and that is your entire payroll register data that you can archive and save for your local records. Another one is the ACH transactions under e-services menu. Now, I strongly recommend to all users of electronic fund transfers to archive this information for a complete record of all ACH transactions for a specified period of time. Okay, ideally the year and all the transactions. If you notice, the screen does offer various filtering options. Like, for example, you can say what type of ACH transactions you want to view, if you want them all, or if you just want direct deposits, tax payments, child support, or billing. Also, if you want credits only, debits only, or both. Notice that the trace number for every transaction is a link. Okay. If by clicking on this link, you get a details report of the transaction that you may print out as proof of the transaction. So remember that whenever you are viewing a screen report as this, just look for the Excel button in the upper right-hand corner to export that information. And again, many of our screens that are reports on screen have this feature available to you. Let's take a look at the employer setup, processes, and procedures. You need to have processes for setting up the employer. One of the things you may use is the employer setup worksheet available in resources as an input sheet. Ideally, you want to perform this test yourself, as it will help you get familiar with the client. Another part of the employer setup is the retirement plan. Okay, and while we are on this topic, I would like to take the opportunity to bring to your attention a feature we added last year regarding 401k or deferred compensation. Payroll Relief now supports integration with the Trans-America Group, also known as TAG, for retirement plan contributions. When you indicate an employer is registered with TAG on the retirement plan setup screen, the check printing screen provides an option to create a TAG file for each payroll, which you may submit to Transamerica with all the information for your deferred compensation deductions as well as employer match. This has been a feature that has been very well received, and currently a lot of firms are using these services for their clients. Employee setup. The employee setup may be done with a simple click. What you need to do is, after setting up the employer with pay types and deductions, you may use the employee setup template to import any amount, whether it's 5 or 1,000 employees, in one single step. You may conveniently email this template to the employer. Your client working in Excel can easily complete and email it back to you, at which point you can import with a single mouse click. We highly recommend this process to avoid oversights and mistakes in data entry. The employer knows their employees better than we do. E-services. Let's talk about e-service fees beforehand. Okay, what's included in your Payroll Relief fee? And what's included is anything that happens in the normal course of business. So, for example, any electronic fund transfers created in the normal course of business, such as direct deposits, taxes, child support, and client billing. You will incur additional fees for extraordinary or outside of the normal course of business. These additional fees are those listed in the ACH application, page 9, I believe, correction fees addendum, that arises outside the normal course of business, such as NSFs, non-sufficient funds, returns, recalls, traces, credit returns, and bank correction fees. Okay, so this is the bulk part of our presentation, e-services, processes, and procedures. Not only an important part, but one that requires most controls and ongoing supervision. We'll cover the following topics: bank information and validation, ACH application, Form 8655, enabling certain e-services, client billing, NSFs, recalls, and fees. When entering or changing sensitive information such as bank accounts, employer or employee, your process should secure confidentiality, have limited staff access, and as discussed earlier, provide safeguarding. It's not a matter of trust. It's a matter of having controls in place. Also, when changing bank information, your controls should include a check on how the change affects transactions in Payroll Relief. If the transaction was already created, then it will be processed with the old bank account information. For example, an approved payroll with direct deposit debit or employee credits. Going forward, no transactions will be created until the new bank information has been validated. Therefore, timing of any change should be planned carefully. An excellent source to check ACH transactions is the ACH transaction screen under e-services, which we just took a look at. A quick perusal of the e-services snapshot will also provide valuable information. An important fact to keep in mind is that the bank validation is done for security reasons. The benefit is that it verifies the employer account and to some extent its legitimacy. ACH Application and Form 8655. Another important process is the completion and submission of the application for electronic fund transfers and Form 8655, reporting agent authorization. If all is done correctly, the whole process should not take more than 4 to 5 banking days. Your process should include a thorough review of the documents prior to upload to ensure completion and proper authorized signatures. Also, safeguarding of the documents. Application contains principal's Social Security number. Proper follow-up. To avoid delays or unnecessary denials, be sure to monitor and follow through on the process in a timely manner. To monitor the status of applications, use the snapshot screen from the e-services drop-down menu to view the status of the currently selected employer's application, or you may select Review ACH Applications from the Payroll Center drop-down menu to monitor the status of all employer applications. And we'll take a look at that later. For your convenience, there are 2 links at the top, at the left and right of the screen that explain in detail the e-services process. Reading these documents is a must for any staff member working with Payroll Relief. Please take the time to read them. It is important that you, your staff, and if applicable, your client, understand how e-services process works. Also, it is important that you pay attention to screen text and instructions. Here, for example, we have included suggested guidelines for risk management. It's in the very bottom left of the screen, and you just barely see the heading, but let me read what it does say. It does say, to reduce liabilities and risk, we strongly recommend that you exercise due diligence with regard to a client's financial viability before you agree to provide e-services, particularly for clients with whom you have no prior relationship. Establish a standard credit policy to clearly define conditions that exclude clients from e-services. Do not offer e-services to clients who have financial problems, poor credit, outstanding liens, judgments, current write-offs, or other credit problems. Also, who cannot provide a street address or a landline business phone number or business website or business email address. And lastly, who cannot provide payroll reports from a prior processor. Insist that they run a new payroll immediately. Okay, these are all indications of possible fraud. Let's talk about enabling the e-services in Payroll Relief. A thorough understanding of the e-services process will ensure quick enrollment and enable all services desired. Okay. Now keep in mind that once the application, the ACH application is accepted, only federal electronic services direct deposit, and auto e-file are automatically enabled. For all other electronic services, such as states, child support, and client billing, you must enable the service yourself. Make sure to include this required action in your process and controls. Very important, do not use bogus account numbers. This will only generate headaches and possible late or failure to file pay notices. These ID numbers are critical for the proper posting of the client's compliance payments and forms. Okay, the example I like to use is imagine depositing your paycheck into an account number 1234567. I mean, the bank will not know to post it to your account, and therefore it will go to a suspense account and it will not be credited. Most states, for both taxes and child support, require the employer to register separately. Include in your process the reading of the state requirements right here. Do not enable any service unless you know the employer has registered and has provided you with the proper account numbers. Once accepted, keep in mind that you have the ability to enable or disable any service the client wants or does not want to use. An action strongly discouraged is the continual on, off, on practice for certain e-services. The most common is EFTPS and state EFT, just because the client has no money in the bank. Okay, this practice is very dangerous and will lead to more problems down the road, not to mention penalties and interest. So we highly discourage doing that. Client billing. Client billing is a convenience feature in Payroll Relief. Okay, it is not intended as a full billing program. It is only for the convenience of collecting your payroll processing fees electronically from your clients. If used, you should have a separate billing process to invoice your clients. Simply enter your fees, indicate how and when you would like the client's bank account debited, and enable the service. Keep in mind that you must have authorization from your client to initiate these transactions. Under e-services preferences, you will find the employer billing authorization form to be kept for your records and the checkbox to indicate that you have received client authorization. I would like to emphasize that it is a natural rule that you cannot debit anyone's account without proper authorization. Therefore, not only the employer billing authorization, but also the employee direct deposit authorization must be kept on file. E-services, NSFs, and recalls. Only take fiscally responsible clients. Okay. We spoke briefly about e-services setup. Now let's look at how to best manage e-services and the controls and procedures that you should enforce to ensure a smooth process. Non-sufficient funds are the #2 problem that we see in electronic services after bogus account numbers, okay, and especially in taxes, direct deposit, client billings, and even sometimes bank validations. These are labor-intensive and are an inconvenience to you, your client, and us. So the simple solution is to have better controls and planning. How to avoid NSFs? Well, you need to talk to your clients and help them understand how important it is to plan properly and allocate funds for tax payments. Defaulting on a payroll tax payment is not cost effective. Penalties plus interest can quickly add up, plus the NSF fees and the time labor costs addressing the NSF. Okay. Keep in mind that the IRS will only apply any deposits to the most recent liabilities, leaving older unpaid liabilities accumulating more interest and stiffer penalty. Okay, the IRS, we all know, collects millions of dollars in late payment penalties and interest every year. A history of NSFs will jeopardize the client's credit and your reputation. E-services will be disabled and eventually the ACH application will be frozen. So if the client has cash flow problems, do not enable EFT, make the manual payments, or use the option to change the settlement date, but do not enable and disable EFT. Okay, there is options available to you in Payroll Relief to work around these conditions, and we cover those in detail in our compliance webinar. But keep in mind always that these options will generate penalty and interest. So, item 13 of the ACH application addresses debit returns and the firm's obligations. It clearly states that if Accountants World cannot collect amounts due because of insufficient funds in the employer's account or any other reason, that the firm agrees to pay the amount due immediately upon demand, plus applicable Accountants World exception processing fees as enumerated in the corrections fees addendums to this document. You are the payroll processor, so make it a priority to be diligent with your client's direct deposit payroll and in general all electronic payments. Protect yourself from the hassle, inconvenience, and possible liability. No funds in the account, then simply no direct deposit. You know your clients and their cash flow. In cases where it is a new client, consider delaying direct deposit or advise them that at first you will not be able to process payables with direct deposit unless there is a 4 business day window. So for example, if they paid it this Friday, you need the payroll by Monday so that you can process it with a 4-day window. In summary, we need your collaboration in ensuring that the whole process runs smoothly and in avoiding the hassle and inconvenience that comes along with non-sufficient funds. We are your partner. However, we are not your client's lending bank. So let's talk a little bit about the firm guarantee. I'm covering this under direct deposit because this is where it's mostly used. However, note that it covers all ACH transactions. What is the purpose of a firm guarantee? It is from the perspective of both you, the firm, and us, the ACH processor, it is to reduce risk. That's the bottom line. It is also to help you reevaluate your risk and to reconsider offering e-services to a client. When is it required? Well, we expect that you as the payroll processor and being directly involved and engaged with your client, that you have done your due diligence. However, our finance department also does their due diligence based on a set of guidelines. If your client does not meet these guidelines, you still want to offer EFT service, then a firm guarantee will be required. Okay. Without getting into the details of our guidelines, some of the reasons are that the client has an unfavorable credit score, that the amount of direct deposit requested is very large, that you and the client are requesting 2-day processing, that the client has had multiple NSFs. Okay. When do you want to use the firm guarantee? Again, we strongly encourage you to have your own set of guidelines when signing payroll clients for EFT services, and even a stricter set of guidelines for clients you wish to guarantee. This is not a guarantee to take lightly. It is a legal addendum to the ACH application, and both documents have your signature. Be selective, protect yourself, and the backbone of your payroll services, us. For more details, please refer to the ACH overview document that I referenced earlier. And remember, you're the payroll processor, we're your back office and facilitator. Together, we are a team. Recalls. Recalls can be initiated from the e-services recall screen. The first order of business would be to look at the notes link. Reason being that it provides the following valuable information. 1, valid reasons for recall per NACHA regulations are duplicate payment, payment to an incorrect receiver, and payment of an incorrect amount. Those 3 are the only reasons for recall. Secondly, Accountants World LLC will process the direct deposit reversal for the above referenced employees as requested. Should the recall fail, it will be the employer's responsibility to collect these funds from the employee. And lastly, national regulations require that the employee and contractor be notified of the recall. Once you have selected the employee, you click on the reason, acknowledge that you understand that the recall may or may not be successful, and submit the recall. Okay, recalls have to be submitted within 4 banking days of the pay date. And again, if the employee already withdrew the funds and we are unsuccessful, then the responsibility falls upon the employer to get those funds back directly from the employee. The payroll process. Okay, so you have set up controls and documented processes for engaging and setting up the client and e-services. Now let's talk about the actual processing of payrolls. The payroll process is a repetitive, ongoing cycle in which it sometimes, if something goes wrong at any stage, it carries into the next stage, compounding the problem and the aggravation. Save yourself the aggravation. It is our experience that there is a tendency to take this area for granted and not exercise due diligence and have established controls and procedures. We believe that this is because of the nature of payroll and that it is a reoccurring cycle, and for the most part with little or no change. This is precisely why it lends itself to mistakes, aggravation, and even fraud. It is these types of processes that require the boring checklist and the long documentation. The engagement and setup are one-time events. This is not. This is a continuous process that requires processes and controls to run smoothly. So controls while processing payroll. You want to set up and document a daily ongoing process for payroll processing. You want to document the entire process from data collection to check printing, sorry about that, and distribution. Data collection, who's entering the hours? The client's location, or your staff? And how are they entering it? Is it being direct data entry? Is it being uploaded? Is it being faxed? Are you using the Excel import? The calculation. Before going ahead with the payroll, this is a good time to ask, does the client have the funds? Payroll review. What is the process? Who's reviewing prior to and after approval? What about the reports? Are they being printed? Are they being emailed? As far as approving the payroll, who is approving the payroll? What is the process? Okay, here's a tip. If the firm is approving, have a different staff member review the payroll for any discrepancies. Check printing. Who's printing the paychecks and direct deposit advices? Is the client 100% direct deposit? Also set up process and controls for everyday ongoing issues that may arise and how to handle them. For example, client delay in providing the information. Suddenly you have a bonus or a commission payroll that you need to run. Again, non-sufficient funds for taxes and payrolls. Who's handling this? The person must be accessible during business hours. What if there's an exceeded limits situation or a next day tax due situation where the liability is over $100,000 and the taxes are due the next day? So there's a lot of things to keep in mind and a lot of questions to ask in creating these controls and processes. So let's talk about general controls. Data entry of payroll information is an important job. The entire company depends on the payroll department for good information. Good information is described as timely, accurate, and verifiable, and usable. Payroll data may be entered by payroll, human resources, or the employee themselves through an employee portal. Good information relies on accurate data entry. The payroll department should have edit and control functions in place for maintaining the accuracy of data. Control and edit functions ensure that only appropriate data are entered and that the data entered are confirmed. Companies use two types of control functions: validity tests, edits, and control edits. Validity edits show whether or not the data entered meet the requirements set forth by the company. For example, the system may notify the user if the data are outside the scope of the company's limits, like in the case of payroll exceeded limits. Control edits show whether or not the data entered are what the user intended to enter. Control edits generally use a system or interim control totals called batches. Batch and hash control totals or data entered into the payroll system must be controlled to ensure that the data that are intended to be entered have actually been entered. Batch controls are designed to ensure that a batch of data has been correctly entered. Apply the following steps to implement batch controls. First, compute totals from the documents used for payroll entry. Secondly, produce computer-generated totals of the data entered and compare the totals obtained from the documents to the totals obtained from the report. Research and correct the differences. Balancing and reconciling. Another way to verify the integrity of the information in the payroll system is through balancing and account reconciliation procedures. These procedures include the following. The master record of employee payments must be maintained and edited to substantiate federal and state tax returns. All payroll liability tax accounts should be reconciled monthly to verify company liability for unpaid taxes. Payroll liability accounts for deductions must be balanced to pay registers to ensure that the amount in liability accounts is accurate. Bank accounts for payroll should be reconciled monthly with all outstanding checks researched and all stale dated checks cleared. And lastly, the reconciliation process to help prevent out-of-balance conditions between payroll records and amounts reported to the government agencies and to reduce possible penalties from federal and state agencies. Employers must regularly reconcile or balance their wage and tax information. When employers reconcile their payroll records, they must make sure that the amounts withheld, deposited, paid, and reported agree with each other. And if not, they find out why and make corrections. Performing reconciliations with each period throughout the year allows employers to correct discrepancies before preparing and filing quarterly and year-end tax returns, thus saving the payroll departments from quarterly and year-end disasters. So in summary, do your reconciliations after every payroll. Don't wait until the quarter end or the year end. Okay, that was a lot on that screen. Payroll processing summary screen in Payroll Relief. The payroll summary screen is perhaps the most valuable screen in the process and can be viewed prior to and after approval. The reason it is so valuable is that it contains pertinent information about the payroll just processed. We recommend that you pay close attention to the details here. Okay. For example, notice that this payroll has more checks than employees. This means that some employees received a second check. Pay close attention to any warnings as well as options selected in the payroll. You may need to take proper actions. So here, for example, under options, it shows that the late direct deposit was authorized, and there's a warning that a terminated employee has been included in the payroll. Okay, and there's a number of other warnings and options that come here that you need to pay attention to. And at the right is your total cost of payroll, which is also generated in the payroll summary report. Okay, we talked about this before. You need a process to handle the situation. Okay, here's a case where the employer indicated on their ACH application that their average direct deposit would be $15,000. So with this payroll, they have grossly exceeded the limit, and the only options are to disable direct deposit for the high-paying employees. so that the payroll is within the normal dollar limit, or wire transfer the funds to accountants world no later than 2 p.m. On the day before the payday. Okay, usually this occurs when you process a bonus and or commission payroll. Had they exceeded their limit by a more acceptable amount, the system would have given the option perhaps to process the payroll on a 4-day processing window instead of a 3-day. Okay, I cannot get into the details of the system's calculations to come up with the respective options. The main point here is that in situations like this one, both you and the client need to plan properly to avoid panic at the last minute. You also need a process to handle a situation like this. Okay, this is usually when there is a bank holiday, or you just missed the deadline for processing a direct deposit payroll. Okay, bank holidays affect payroll processing with direct deposit because you need to process 1 day earlier than normal. Note that, okay, the next banking holiday will display at the bottom left of the data entry screen 2 weeks before the holiday. An announcement is usually posted in the program announcements, especially for those easy-to-forget bank holidays during tax season, perhaps when we're very busy and we forget that there's Martin Luther King Day and President's Day, or Columbus Day and Veterans Day. Last but not least is that you need to have a process in place for when this occurs. Yes, you may request an exception, and if approved, you may pay a $100 fee to have the employees paid on time. But this is a cost and an aggravation that could be avoided by having controls in place. Payroll processing check printing. Are the checks printed per employer, as you see here on the screen? Or are we printing them, are we using the batch check printing feature in Payroll Relief to print all the checks at once? You need to have a documented process for check and report printing. Are they printed or are they emailed? Lastly, what is the method of distribution? Where are they printed? Are they printed at the firm? Are they printed at the client's office? The easiest is probably to archive to Cloud Cabinet or email to the client. However, if you're emailing, make sure that you have a password protect in the employer preferences screen. Okay, we do highly recommend the employer preferences screen does have a entry for a password, and any emails that are sent will be password protected with that password, especially if you're emailing confidential information. Moving right along, managing payroll could be quite cumbersome. This is why Payroll Relief is the only program in the market that provides you with the tools to manage and analyze your payroll service. Make certain to have at a high level a documented process on how and when to use these tools as controls in the processing of payrolls as well as for compliance purposes. You are most familiar with these tools, and we hope you have been using them. However, it is important enough to review them in this webinar. Probably the most important, especially if you have a large number of clients, is the employee changes report, which we discussed earlier and we'll discuss in just a few minutes or slides. Managing client activity. Under the firm administration, you may also view your client's activity in detail or in summary. Okay, the screen provides information such as how many payrolls, how many checks, how many direct deposits, how many 1099 contractors are in there, how many W-2s, and if you have any failed Social Security numbers in that client. So very valuable information at a glance for all your clients here in the client activity screen. Client billing. Okay, we spoke earlier about the ability to collect your payroll processing and compliance fees via EFT ACH. The processing fee screen, also on the firm administration, allows you to view pending and billed fees for all clients for a specific period of time. If there's a billing error under pending, you have the ability simply by clicking on the line to delete that charge, provided it hasn't gone yet. From this screen, you may review all employers to ensure that fees that you are charging are in line with the client agreement. Managing clients' e-services. If you need to get a bird's eye view of your client's e-services, view it all under the Payroll Center ACH Application Profile. Okay, again, Payroll Center ACH Application Profile. It will list all your employers, what the application, when it was received, what the status of the application is, how many processing dates they're set for, what the approved amount is, whether the bank has been validated, whether you're using direct deposit, EFTPS, pre-funding, or auto e-file, all in one screen. Okay, valuable information here for your payroll practice and for managing tasks. Okay, so we finally got to the big report that we've been talking about throughout the webinar. That's the employer and employee changes report. Okay, but one more before we get there, sorry about that, is the payroll activity screen, which shows you here today's payrolls approved and in progress. Okay, now we get to it. As mentioned earlier, under System Payroll Controls, use audit trails to track and identify changes to data by user. Okay, this report is the tool that Payroll Relief provides to achieve this task. We strongly recommend that you use this report regularly as a control for possible irregularities. Okay, so you have here, this is at the firm level. Again, it shows a list of all your employers, employer name, what the category or what the area was of the change, what the change involved. So in this case, for example, we have some direct deposit changes for the employee Robert Islander. They turned on direct deposit, the bank information was changed, and so forth. It shows you the old value, the new value, and most important, who the user was and what the date and time of the change was. Okay, this report is invaluable. It is also available per employer under the management reports. So we cannot stress enough its usefulness and recommendation for use with controls. One example that comes to mind is to review all employers, the direct deposit changes to prevent fraud. Okay, so maybe on a monthly basis, you want to come in here, set the dates from the month, for the beginning of the month to the end of the month, just view the category direct deposit and see what changes had taken place. Okay, and as you can see in the upper right-hand corner, it is exportable to Excel so that you can save it, or if you want to further edit it. So under the category, you can show all categories. You can show employer changes, payment changes, salary changes, tax information changes, deductions, paid time off, direct deposit, any changes to employees, any voided checks, or any miscellaneous changes. So you can categorize, or you can use all the categories. Okay, we're running a little over, and I apologize for that. That's due to the technical problems we had in the beginning, so I'll try to wrap it up as quickly as possible. The Managed Compliance reports under the Payroll Center offers you 7 different tabs for managing all aspects of compliance for all your clients in one screen. Okay, these are covered in detail in our compliance webinar. Basically, the first 3 tabs relate to electronic filing. The next 2 tabs are pretty much self-explanatory, forms due and forms past due. And then you want to use your Managed Taxes screen to review for all employers a list of the tax liabilities versus the payments for a range of dates based on pay date. And the last is the Federal Lookback screen, which is critical at year-end and verifies the employers, or shows you the employer's look-back period, taxes, as well as what frequency they're set for. So I would like to summarize this section by saying that with these tools, you are able to keep track of your clients, their payrolls and compliance, and any changes to sensitive information. You are in full control. So please use these tools as often as you can. However, we all know that there's much more to manage than just payroll in your accounting firms. Accounting firms have many tasks and workflow to manage. Payroll Relief tools help with payroll relief tasks and workflow as it relates to payroll. However, what about all the other tasks that we have? Well, there are many very good workflow programs available today that we can use to help manage all of the firm's tasks and workflow. These, for example, are just a few. Okay, and I purposely put the arrow on Trello because a tool has been created to have the complete visibility into your practice. Okay, this tool gives a dashboard view of work logs. Okay, so for those of you that are not familiar with Trello, it is a powerful task manager or workflow manager tool. Basically, you can have different boards. So picture a cork board, and on those boards you can have different lists, like you see here. For example, there's a list for NSFs, there's a list for notices, a list for rejected e-files, and so forth. Even a list for today's payrolls. And under those lists are cards, what they call cards. And those cards can be moved from one list to the other, or they can move all the way to the end. At the end, there's a list that says done. Okay, so it's a powerful management tool, and what's going to be happening here is, in addition to that, also is that you can customize and add more lists, or even add another board, for that matter, to cover areas like tax, audit, and accounting. So, for example, here we have the Payroll Relief board, but there could be other boards for accounting power, or tax, or audit, or whatever you choose. Now you're in control. It's a different application. And what's nice about it is when you click on one of the cards, okay, it gives you more abilities. Like, for example, you can add staff members. Okay, you can assign staff members. You can add notes. You can add a checklist. You can even attach documents, like a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. The fees, okay, are available in these in Trello. So, like, for example, here by clicking on members, I get a list of all the board members, or in the case of the firm, it would be the staff members. And I can assign them to different cards on the board. And when I do, they will get an email. And when that card is moved or edited, they will get an email. So it also provides a means of communication within the firm. So what does a tool like this do for your practice? Well, it will solve the following problems. It will solve tracking of work done and work in progress, tracking of forms not done and payments not made, tracking of notices, log all commitments, prioritizing the work done, dates established, proper status, and streamline the workflow with checklists, due dates, assignments, tasks, etc. Okay, this feature is coming soon and will integrate with our products seamlessly. So to give you an example, in payroll, you would have the ability to post any payroll task directly to the Trello board, and hence the list that I showed you, like NSFs or past due forms or today's payrolls. That information can come from the payroll program seamlessly into Trello, create cards for which you can assign staff members, and you can also add your own list, like in the case and the example that I showed of notices and other items. So a very powerful tool, and we're looking forward to releasing this in the near future. So to finalize, we have some tools and resources for your convenience in developing and maintaining controls. Payroll Relief has gathered all payroll-related documents and made them available in the program's resource area. Supporting documents such as employer billing authorization, employee direct deposit authorization, standard power of attorney, firm ACH funds guarantee, and overdraft protection template, and even sample letters of engagement. Okay, and there's more. If you look at the menu, there's training, there's supporting more employment forms for all states, for forms and publications, links, tools, webinars, both live and recorded webinars that you can register for, and lastly, some marketing assistance and sample reports. Okay, so we have covered a lot of material, and I appreciate your patience. This material has been with emphasis on developing and maintaining controls both external and internal to payroll relief. So let's summarize. Payroll is frequently the largest operating expense of a business. When you factor in the confidential payroll information to the financial aspects, developing and maintaining adequate controls within payroll environment is essential. Physical. The importance of safeguarding confidential information and access to physical payroll locations and documents. We talked about staffing, due diligence in hiring and assigning tasks to appropriate staff. Talked about the system itself, the most detailed of the three areas, and the one we obviously wanted to place more emphasis on was the use of payroll relief features and tools to help you develop and maintain controls. I spoke briefly about defining the client engagement and the employer and employee setup processes. We covered a lot in the topic of e-services because this area is crucial and requires perhaps the most controls. Another key area to ensure a smooth payroll operation is the daily and routine processing of client payrolls. I spoke about the importance of having checks and balances throughout the process and having staff review each other's work. At a higher level, I showed you the unique and advanced management and analytical tools that Payroll Relief offers you and stressed the importance of incorporating these into your processes and controls, especially the employer-employee changes report for accurately tracking identifiable changes to data by user. And lastly, we went over the vast amount of payroll-related resources available to you, your staff, and your clients, and also a little peek at a new feature coming soon, which was the Trello board. So a lot of material, a lot of resources and tools to help you develop and maintain controls. So don't let the lack of controls ruin your business. Take the time to develop and maintain controls to ensure a smooth running payroll service. And relax, having the confidence that your payroll service is operating efficiently and profitably. I do want to remind you that registration for our webinars is available in my portal. And I want to thank you for attending our Payroll Relief Developing and Maintaining Payroll Controls webinar. I do again apologize for the audio difficulties we had in the beginning, which brought us a little bit over time. And at this point in time, we will open up the question and answer session, and my colleague Roger Batista is with us, and he will help me as he has been along while I've been presenting. I know he's been answering some of your questions. So again, thank you very much for taking the time to attend, and we will now address your questions. Okay, we have a question from Audrey, or a suggestion. If we can have the ability to archive e-service ACH application, ACH transactions to cloud prior to terminating client would be beneficial. I'm assuming that that's automatic because you can do it right now. It would just be a manual process. As I showed you, you can export the ACH transactions report to Excel, and then you can upload that Excel document to Cloud Cabinet. But I'm thinking that what you're suggesting here is that when you go and terminate a client, that before the actual termination takes place, that the system automatically do that, and it would probably do it for the entire year. So we'll take a look into that. Jamie has a question. How do you go about getting 2 or 3 day processing time for ACH direct deposits? That is a process. Our support team can help you with that. Usually it's a request that you have to send in to the finance department. Okay, Tanisha. Oh, Rod, you already answered that question. Sorry about that. Michael had a question. Is there a bird's eye report that will show payroll tax returns due at a given date, and a bird's eye report showing all clients' returns filed at a certain date? The bird's eye report for all your clients under the Payroll Center Managed Compliance, one of those 7 tabs was Forms Due. That shows you for all your clients or a particular client, if you select it, any forms due within the next 30 days. Okay, so it's not a specific date because most forms, all forms are due either at the end of the compliance month or in the middle of the month, but it will give you forms due within the next 30 days. And on the employer dashboard, when you log in, there's a pane that says Forms Due, and it will show you any forms that are past due in red. The date will be in red, and the ones in the future will be regular. And also the tax form screen will show you per employer any tax forms filed. As far as a bird's eye view of all your clients showing all the returns already filed as a particular certain date, it does not. We do not have that, but that is a good suggestion. Okay, there's a very good question here by Jennifer, although I believe she's no longer with us. Is Trello integrated with Payroll Relief to import tasks, or do you have to manually create each card? Absolutely not. You do not have to create each card. Payroll will be integrating with Trello and sending all available information within Payroll to Trello. And the reason I say available is, for example, if the client received a notice and you have a list for notices and who's handling them and whatnot, that's something that would not be from Payroll Relief. But again, once once the information is fed from Payroll to Trello, you can add all these other things, on a broader perspective than just Payroll Relief. Good question. Tanisha again has a question. Any news on app integrations with time systems? We are currently looking at that. Unfortunately, we were disappointed that we didn't get that much feedback from our customers. So right now we are looking at T-Sheets and a company called AMG Time in California. And we already have SwipeClock and Advantech. And as the year, now that we finished the first quarter compliance, we are going to be looking at more if possible. Okay, Jamie had a situation where if a client has an NSF ACH payroll for the first time and their ACH capabilities get frozen, I doubt very much that they would actually, that they would freeze or, unapprove the ACH application if it's the first time. The only time I can see that happening perhaps is if it was never funded. That would be a problem, but I don't believe the finance department will, freeze your application based on a first-time NSF for payroll, unless, again, the employer doesn't fund it.
Yeah, you know what does happen sometimes, Carlos, in these situations, they're always kind of unique. We might be trying to get a hold of the employer and they're not being responsive to us and answering us when we're trying to notify them of the wiring instructions. So
very good point. Yes, and that's why I read that item 13 of the ACH application.
Yeah, then that kind of shows us that they're not that diligent about it, and if they're not, then we have to control the risk. So that could be why. So we look at each situation individually, and so if we freeze an account the first time around, that's probably a really important reason why. Lucien had a question, I guess, asking, will there be an accepted button for compliance forms? I'm not really exactly sure. There's one for rejected button?
Well, there's one for rejected because that's the one that really requires an action item. If it's rejected, you need to address the rejection and perhaps re-file. There isn't one for accepted because that's the default that the forms are accepted.
Yeah, so if it's good, right? It doesn't need anything extra.
Correct. Well, I think we've gotten all the questions, and you know, again, I need to apologize for the audio problem at the beginning. I did go back and start over again, so hopefully you didn't miss anything critical, because I did go back once we did reestablish the audio to the beginning slides, so that you would not miss out on that information.
Yeah, and you sounded fine once you redialed in, so you're okay.